Bureau's Business Relations Marketing Lead. Thank you so much again for joining us today. The BBB webinar series is designed to educate and inform you, our accredited businesses, on relevant Better Business topics. Today, we're very excited to welcome Nakedia Washington. Nakedia has been with BBB serving Alaska, Oregon, and Western Washington for over 6 years and has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to BBB and our dispute resolution services. Nakedia will be giving us an in-depth look at what services are available to you, our accredited businesses, and how and when you may choose to use these services. But before we get started, I'd like to take just a moment and review a couple housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit your questions at any time. Simply type them into the box on the left side of your screen, and we will be addressing questions throughout the presentation. If you are viewing along with others in your office, please designate a scribe to submit your group's questions. Second, if you experience any technical difficulties, on the left side of your screen you're going to see a link to GoToWebinar's troubleshooting website, as well as a toll-free number to call and listen to the webinar over the phone. Please use them if you're having any trouble hearing the audio presentation. Also note that to resolve a problem of the slides not advancing automatically, please try exiting and re-entering the webinar. This webinar is being live recorded, and the online archive will be available next week after the live version on our YouTube channel at BBB News for You, and that's BBB News, the number 4, and the letter U. And finally, we'll be live tweeting during the webinar, so if you'd like to join in the conversation, and we encourage you to, please tweet at #BBBwebinar or follow us at BBB News for You. And again, that's the same, BBB News, the number 4, and the letter U. Okay, this time I'd like to turn it over to Nakedia to get us started.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to Better Business Bureau's webinar on BBB Dispute Resolution Services and what they can mean for your accredited business. My name is Nakedia Washington, and I will be your presenter today. I do want to apologize ahead of time. I do have a cold that I'm battling, so I just hope you all can bear with me. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, a little bit about me. I'm sure I've probably worked with a few of you before. As Shauna mentioned, I've been with Better Business Bureau's Dispute Resolution Department for over 6 years now. I deal with complaints. Complaints is my thing. I've worked with small businesses as well as nationwide companies in resolving disputes. I'm very familiar with BBB's complaint process as well as in the additional services we provide for resolution. My hope for today's webinar is that you'll all leave here well informed. Dealing with complaints can definitely be stressful, but I'm hoping to add some ease to the process by making sure that you know what to expect ahead of time. The next time you receive a complaint or if a dispute arises with one of your customers, I want to make sure that you are all aware of the services, free services for that matter, that you have at your arsenal through your accreditation with BBB. So that kind of leads me into my next slide. What is dispute resolution? Well, it's the process of resolving conflict between parties. Our focus today will be on alternate dispute resolution services, so that's how you'll hear me refer to it throughout this webinar. Honestly, when you really think about it, they're really one and the same. They are the services that are used after two parties have attempted to resolve the dispute on their own, but before the complaint has been taken to court. It's the services people use between those two steps. It usually involves the assistance of a third party, a neutral third party, which is actually the role BBB plays when a complaint is brought to our attention. In today's society, complaints seem to be almost unavoidable. The Internet provides a forum for consumers to easily express their displeasures, oftentimes without the business being made aware of the issues. Since I think we all can agree even the best of companies are susceptible to complaints, I think the main focus should be on what do you do once you receive them. You know, kind of in the spirit of, okay, so you've got a complaint, now what? And that what is what our focus is going to be on today. The main thing is that you are responsive to the complaints. As an accredited business, you've agreed to respond to and address all disputes that are brought to your attention by BBB. This does include utilizing mediation, arbitration, or any other alternate dispute resolution service if requested by BBB. I have included a link to BBB's Code of Business Practices for review. Feel free to click through to familiarize yourself with what it means to be an accredited business, as well as request and expects of you. Sorry. It's always good to have a great reminder. The Dispute Resolution Continuum shows the escalation of disputes and different services that are used to resolve complaints. It starts off with conciliation, a neutral third party stepping in and attempting to open the lines of communication. settlement teleconference, which is pretty much over-the-phone mediation. And we have mediation, which is where a neutral third party attempts to get both sides to reach their own resolution. Arbitration, which is where a neutral third party listens to both sides and renders a judgment. And then we have court, or litigation, as I have it listed here. This is where a judge or jury hears both sides and renders a judgment. Now you note that as the continuum progresses, so does the cost involved. Also something to take into account is the fact that in conciliation, settlement teleconference, and mediation, it's up to the parties to reach the resolution. However, in arbitration and litigation, the resolution or judgment is rendered by someone else, an uninvolved party. So today I plan to go over the various services BBB provides for dispute resolution: settlement teleconference, mediation, arbitration, and BBB security account. I want to start off with conciliation, as this is the basis that usually leads to the other alternate dispute resolution services. It's the basic complaint process. It's how all complaints are initially handled by BBB. I do want to assure you that there is a complaint process. Once a complaint is received, it is vetted against BBB's complaint acceptance policy, handed down by the Council of BBB. Though we cannot determine whether or not a customer's claims are valid or not, or whether they hold merit, we do review the information to make sure it falls within BBB's scope of processing. Once BBB receives a complaint, we notify you. And usually this is by your preferred method: email, mail, or fax. If you haven't received a complaint within the last 3 months, we will conduct a courtesy call, and we call that a pre-call. This helps to make sure that nothing's changed with the contact information BBB has on file. It also allows BBB to answer any questions you may have regarding the complaint process. When BBB receives a complaint, we send it to you, the business, for a response. We look for a response that either resolves or addresses the issues the consumer is raising. We certainly understand that there are two sides to every story, and if you feel what this customer is asking is not warranted or deserving of the consumer, then BBB is seeking a response explaining why that is. We also request supporting documents to support your position when you are able to provide them. Once the complaint has gone back and forth through BBB a few times, we do step in and judge the complaint. And what we look for is whether or not all the issues raised in the complaint are addressed within your responses. If all the issues of the complaint are addressed or spoken to within the responses that you've provided to us, we will close the complaint as addressed. And this just means that even though the consumer is not satisfied with your responses, BBB has determined that you have addressed all the issues that the consumer has raised. If there are issues that are remain outstanding, or if the complaint is disputed, which is a he said, she said complaint, then BBB will either request additional responses or present other services to resolve the dispute, such as mediation or arbitration. Now, before I move on, are there any questions on what I've discussed thus far?
It doesn't look like we have any questions at this time.
Okay, perfect. All right, settlement teleconference. So this is also known as phone conciliation, so that's kind of how you hear me refer to it throughout the webinar. It's the process of getting both parties on the phone and discussing their positions. The hope is that in the end, a settlement is reached by the parties. Your case manager may suggest this service is if in the back and forth responses it appears that neither party is hearing each other due to a breakdown in communication. It is a formatted structure where your case manager leads the process and manages the conference call between the business and consumer. And just a side note, you all have case managers here with the Better Business Bureau. So that's someone who handles all your complaints and is available for questions or concerns. If you're not sure who your case manager is, feel free to give us a call, and we'd be happy to put you in contact with them. All right, so back to phone conciliation. So during the process of settlement teleconference, each party will have the chance to talk about the dispute. The case manager will ask questions and take notes. It's really up to both parties to create but not judge different possible solutions, and then hopefully arrive at points or options that meet both parties' needs. If an agreement is reached, BBB will draw up a settlement agreement, which addresses the who, what, when, where, and how of the agreement. If an agreement is not reached, then BBB will continue the complaint process. I personally had an experience with a business who was concerned that the consumer did not reach out to him prior to filing the complaint. Upon receiving the complaint, he gave me a call, and he had requested that we get the consumer on the phone for phone conciliation. The consumer was in agreement to this. After completing the process, the parties were able to reach a settlement agreement, and we were able to close the complaint as satisfied. So this is just an example of when the services could be used. So mediation. What is mediation? Well, mediation is where an impartial third party, the mediator, clarifies and reframes problems and helps the two sides talk to each other, and discuss solutions. The mediation does not decide the merits of either party's claim. The mediator's role is to identify the interests of each party and work with them to arrive at a win-win solution. I do want to note that BBB's mediators are not BBB staff persons. They are professionally trained neutral third-party volunteers. Typically in the mediation process, the mediator meets with both parties and guides them in working out their own mutually agreeable solutions. It's very similar to the phone conciliation process, but it's sometimes more lengthy. The end goal is to have a settlement agreement reached. Again, it's up to both parties to come up with the resolutions. The mediator does not render decisions or judgment. So some advantages of mediation. Well, it's a chance to be heard. It's a chance to develop new ways of thinking about a problem, and a chance for the parties to develop their own solutions. If an agreement is reached in mediation, the complaint will close as satisfied. If the parties are not able to reach an agreement, the next step would be arbitration. All right, so arbitration. BBB has two separate arbitration processes. We have the pre-dispute and post-dispute. Pre-dispute is used when a business has it written into their contract that they will resolve all disputes using BBB's arbitration program. When this occurs, the complaint skips the conciliation process and goes right into arbitration. Post-dispute refers to all other arbitrations, complaints that have gone through conciliation and or mediation but was unsuccessful, or also complaints where the business has reached out to BBB for service prior to a complaint being filed. In arbitration, the parties state their views at an arbitration hearing, offer evidence, testimony from witnesses, and let an impartial arbitrator make a decision that will end the dispute. Arbitration is not as formal as going to court. Usually it's held at one of BBB's locations. If for whatever reason one party is not able to be present, or if all parties are kind of far away from the Better Business Bureau, then we can also hold the hearing over the phone. During the process, each party is granted the same amount of time to explain their position. Time will also be provided to ask questions to the other party. After the hearing, the arbitrator is given 10 days to render a decision, as well as an explanation for the decision. Once the decision and reason for the decision is received, it is forwarded to both parties via certified mail for review and follow-through. Whatever the arbitrator decides is legally binding, which means that it can be upheld in court. Once BBB confirms the decision has been upheld, the complaint closes as satisfied, and the details of the complaint remain internal. Some benefits of arbitration. Well, it's a confidential process, so unlike court proceedings, the details of the arbitration remain internal and is not made public record. It also tends to be less time-consuming and costly than if the issues were taken to court. If the hearing involves construction issues or items that would kind of warranty inspection, we can conduct what we call an on-site hearing. This is where the hearing is held at the site of dispute, so at the consumer's home. A lot of people find this to be beneficial because sometimes pictures fail to clearly show the areas of concern. Another benefit of arbitration is that the arbitrator's decision is based on fairness rather than the law. Now, before I move on to security account, I just want to check in again. Are there any questions with what I've covered so far?
Yeah, Nakedia, it looks like we had a question come in from Craig, and he wanted to know, and this was kind of during the phone conciliation part of the presentation, that he asked, are business-to-business complaints handled through the same process?
So it depends, because we handle complaints between business to business, but it's where the party that's filing the complaint is the customer of the other business. So let's say if your business hired another company to come in and do a service and you were dissatisfied with the service that you received, then you can certainly file a complaint with us, and we would certainly move forward with the different alternate dispute resolution processes for resolution. But complaints where one business is filing a complaint against the other and maybe seeking payment, maybe that business hasn't paid them, those are complaints that are considered beyond our scope. So since it's not something that we would handle through our regular conciliation process, it's not something that we would use our alternate dispute resolution services to resolve. And that's because we can't file complaints against consumers. And in that case, that business would be your customer. We don't issue reviews on different customers. Does that answer the question?
I think that was a great answer. We had one more come in and asked, would non-payment issues fall under complaint resolutions through BBB?
So again, if, let's say the business, or you hired, let's say your customer, has filed a complaint because they were told they were going to receive a refund, and they have not received it. Again, that is something that we do consider a valid complaint, and we will use the different alternate dispute resolution services, including conciliation, to resolve the dispute. Now, if you hired a business, or let's say a business hired your company, again, to provide a service for them, and they have failed to pay for that service, then again, that is something that is considered beyond our scope, as in that instance, BBB would be acting as a collection agency, and it's just not the form that you would want to go through to receive that payment from that company.
Great. Okay, I think that answers all the questions we have at this time.
Okay, perfect. All right, so next what we're going to do is we'll review security account. BBB security account is an FDIC insured bank account where money can be placed for the duration of a project or pending the outcome of an arbitration. All right, so how does it work? Well, once both parties agree to use the service, an agreement is signed stating both parties' willingness to participate. The money in question is placed in the secure account either via check or money order. Once the terms of the agreement are reached, or once the arbitrator's decision is rendered, the money is released. So why would you use BBB's security account? Well, if you're in an industry where there's a high dollar amount involved, or if you want to ensure the consumer moves forward with the contract, or even if there's a worry, any kind of worry whatsoever about the payment, the account can be used to ensure the funds are made available to you. In other cases, if a dispute arises in the middle of a project, and if consumer is threatening, that if things aren't completed to their dissatisfaction, that they're going to withhold payment, cancel checks, or do a chargeback on a credit card, the account can be used to store payments in a neutral, safe place based on whatever terms you and the consumer come up with. Some of the possible terms could be that, once the home passes inspection, that the funds will be released to the business. We can also use the security account for cases going to arbitration. That way both parties have assurance that payment will occur pending the result of the hearing. It really is a useless service to instill confidence in both parties. All right, so when would BBB request your company's participation in alternate dispute resolution services? Well, if it's written in your contract that disputes will be resolved using BBB's arbitration, then BBB will request your company's participation. This goes back to the pre-dispute arbitration we discussed earlier. Other instances of where BBB may request participation in an arbitration or mediation is when the complaint has reached an impasse. Where neither party is agreeable to shift their positions, or if the complaint becomes a he said, she said situation with no end or resolution in sight. Those are usually the only times BBB will request your participation, but you can certainly request that BBB move forward with the service at any time by just giving us a phone call, and we'd be happy to move forward with the process. All right, so any questions?
All right. It looks like we had one question. The security account, is that available to all accredited businesses, or is that a service that they have to opt in for?
Oh, no, it's a service that's available to all accredited businesses. It's a free account that you guys can use. Anyone can use it. You just have to come to us. Again, both parties have to be in agreement, so the consumer has to agree to use it as well. I know some businesses that have found usefulness in it with being in an industry where the consumers are entering in a contract but then not following through or getting out of the contract ahead of time. So they would have the consumer put the money in the security account, and then they drew up the terms where at certain points, of completion of the parts of the contract or parts of the project, then those funds will be released to the business. So it definitely is there for you guys to use. You guys all can use it.
Great. And we have one more question about the security account from John. He asked, does a complaint have to be filed to use the security account?
No, a complaint does not have to be filed in order to use it. It's more commonly used after once the complaint is filed. But a complaint doesn't have to be filed in order for us to move forward with arbitration or any of the other services. We will insert a complaint into our system to go ahead and follow through with the process, but a complaint does not have to be filed in order for you guys to reach out to us and request that we use these services.
Okay. And will you go over just really quick again how a business owner could come to the BBB and ask to utilize the security account? What's the process they would have to take?
Yeah, just giving us a phone call, shooting an email. Honestly, you guys, you all have case managers here, and we're all happy to answer any questions that you have. So if you were to just give us a phone call, and then in the next slide it actually has all my contact information, but give your case manager a phone call or give me a phone call, and just give us the details of the situation. We can start the process. Meaning we would get the consumer's information if a complaint has not been filed and reach out to the consumer to get their agreement to move forward with it. And as long as they're in agreement, we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling on that. If the complaint is already filed, so let's say you've just been made aware of a complaint that's been filed with the Better Business Bureau, or if it's a complaint that's been going back and forth a few times and you just think that it'd be best for us to use one of these alternate dispute resolution services like mediation, arbitration, or phone conciliation. Again, just reach out to your case manager, let them know that at this time you're not seeing any progress with the conciliation process and you just would rather use one of the alternate dispute resolution services. I tend to be a little impartial. I tend to move forward with arbitration just because at the end a decision will be reached, and usually with the conciliation process that's kind of a little bit similar to mediation, where both parties are, saying their position. But mediation is awesome too, because it's kind of an art, and somehow mediators have a way of getting both parties to empathize with one another and to really see things from a different light, if you will, and sometimes reach resolution. So again, all these services are here at your arsenal.
Great. And then Christine asked a clarifying question. So a little earlier when we were talking about the security account, you had said that a complaint will be filed. And she asked if a complaint is registered to use the security account, why? Why would we insert a complaint?
Well, more or less just so we can track it on our end to make sure that we are following through with the services, to make sure that we know that once it reaches a certain point that we need to follow up with it. We need to reach out to the business or the consumer to make sure that everything is completed per the agreement. More or less that's what it's for. It's for our tracking purposes to make sure that we're following through on the process.
Okay, so nothing that would negatively affect the business. We just keep it as an internal tracking.
Right, but with arbitration, so let's say if a complaint is brought to our attention, or let's say you reach out to us for arbitration, mediation, or one of the other services, that does show once it does close, and this is if the consumer has not filed a complaint beforehand, that will show as a complaint that was resolved through arbitration or mediation, but the details of the complaint will not be made viewable. So that's a little different.
Perfect. And Diane asked a little question about arbitration, and she wants to know if arbitration services can be used after a lawsuit is filed against the company.
No. We cannot. So once something goes to court, we do not process the complaint. So let's say if a consumer comes to us to file a complaint because they're not happy with what the judge's judgment was, we wouldn't accept that complaint. That would be considered beyond our scope. And the same goes for taking things to arbitration. It's legal and binding, but so is whatever the judge's or the jury's decision. That's also legal and binding. So if something's already been rendered on it, we would not take it to arbitration.
Okay. It looks like that's all the questions we have for this afternoon, but I wanted to give everybody the opportunity, if you guys are interested in having the slides as a resource, something to go back and reference, you can also send us an email. Send it to nakedia.washington@thebbb.org. I believe the email address is right on the screen. Or you can send it to Shauna, SHAWNA.Dutton, DUTTON, at thebbb.org, and we'd be happy to send you a copy of the slides. So great questions, everybody. Thank you all for attending. Please visit us on our website, bbb.org, to register for upcoming webinars and events. And thank you so much, Nakedia, for presenting today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.